Hey guys, it's Bix. This is part 3, an update kind of on the timeline. A couple things have happened since I posted the timeline videos. If you haven't seen them yet, go to the private road, log in, and then it's the second item down right here, special report Roota's timeline. And you will see two-part series on why I believe the best, most likely time for the system to be ripped apart, at least the beginning of the end type of thing, of the final battle would be September 11th, 2019, this year. So in a couple months away. And we are inching towards it. And I explain how I get there. I'm not saying this is a fact. I'm saying out of any date between between the last attempt at taking down the system, which was September 11th, 2008 at 11 in the morning, the next most likely time frame for this to happen between now and the next 10 years would be this September 11th, probably at 11 o'clock in the morning. It will probably start behind the scenes with the computer programs as outlined in part 2 of this discussion. But here's some things I want to add. The continued assault on Deutsche Bank has not ended. Again, these crimes have been at Deutsche Bank for decades. Everybody knew Deutsche Bank was a criminal enterprise. Why now? Why are they going after the world's most systemic bank, the largest too big to fail bank on planet Earth, shy of JP Morgan, but Deutsche Bank has a larger derivative book, somewhere around $49 trillion. And everybody from the media to governments to analysts are attacking Deutsche Bank at this time. Why are they doing that? Because they want to destroy the system. That is my take. It's been my take for a long time. So Deutsche Bank releases earnings and it got destroyed because it lied. It tried to lump in a bunch of losses with their abnormal losses. Here's the article. Deutsche Bank shares slumped 5% after greater than expected second quarter net loss. Key points. Analysts polled by research firm Refinitiv TV estimated a net loss of 1.7 billion euros for the period due to the bank's massive restructuring program announced earlier this month. So they were already expecting a $1.7 billion loss. The German bank itself had previously said it expected to report a loss of 2.8 billion. So the analysts were even more excited. And then we have German lender Deutsche Bank reported a weaker than expected net loss of 3.15 billion euros, or $3.5 billion for the second. That's just the second quarter. It is insane. It is insane. It is insane. This all has to do with derivatives. They're trying to hide them. They're trying to get rid of them. It is not going to work. Now, why does this? Now, obviously, I talked about Deutsche Bank before. Deutsche Bank is the linchpin of the derivatives. Now, let's talk quickly about the other report that I put on the Road to Roota in the private road. It would be, I put it under Patreon posts, I believe. Yes. And that is our friend Cliff High and his take on what's going on with Deutsche Bank. And listen to this 3-part series. It's really good. I traveled up to Washington to hang out with Cliff. We talked about some amazing stuff, but we talk about the potential for a collapse. And Cliff is like, no, there isn't going to be a collapse, although there'll be major hiccups. And I said, well, how can there be no collapse of Deutsche Bank when they have $49 trillion? He believes, from his data, that the IMF is going to do some kind of bailout of Deutsche Bank. Now, I don't see how that could happen. I don't think the IMF wants it to happen. But there's clearly something going on at the IMF, so Cliff may be right again. And if Cliff is right, that they do bail out Deutsche Bank, we won't have a major collapse, which is good, but what we'll have is massive, massive, massive flows of funds into gold, silver, and cryptocurrencies, as in massive. I described it as a fire hose in a Dixie cup, which would be the best of all worlds, because the system stays together and our investments go crazy, as in really crazy. Do I think it'll happen that way? I do not, because it takes deciders. And these are the people that have been deciding what's going to go on for way too long. And they are not all powerful like Dick Allgaier believes. They are not. They didn't know about the Road to Roota stuff. They didn't know about a lot of things that I've analyzed. They didn't know Trump was going to win. They are not all powerful. But given that link to Cliff's data, the IMF, and Deutsche Bank, I find it, and the date, September 11th, we have this. Christine Lagarde, the IMF director, resigns. This was last week, when I was on the road trip. The managing director of the IMF, Ms. Christine Lagarde, yesterday officially notified executive board of the fund of her decision to step down from the position effective September 12th, 2019. This was a surprise to everybody. But look at the date. Her last day of work, September 11th. It is going to get insane on September 11th. This is not by accident. We all heard Christine Lagarde go back and listen to her talk about numerology. It's a really bizarre talk she gave on numerology. Absolutely, she's deep with the occultists. Quote, I have met with the executive board and submitted my resignation from the fund with effect from September 12th, 2019. The relinquishment of my responsibilities as managing director announced previously will remain in effect until then. Okay, so here's the deal. Obviously, she's a numerology person. She's probably going to go to the ECB to head the European Central Bank, which is a failing bank anyway. Is she going to go anywhere? Are we going to have the computers lock up on September 11th? I think we will. I'm not saying it's 100%. If I get this call right, holy crap. But clearly something is happening on September 11th. 11 years after the day after the big crash on September 11, 2008 at 11 in the morning. So keep an eye on 11 in the morning. I expect all computers to fire off and get in that fist fight with each other that Dick Allgaier was talking about in the last video. More on Christine Lagarde. Lagarde's exit reopens the question, why does a European always lead the IMF? So IMF is clearly taking going to be taking some kind of role in the aftermath of the Deutsche Bank failing. European wrangling over IMF job reaches stalemate in France. Everybody wants to be the IMF. But the IMF doesn't have any money. They got to get their special drawing rights. See, this would be the rejiggering of the old system. I don't think it's going to work. I don't want it to work. Yes, cryptos will go crazy. I understand that. Yes, gold and silver will go crazy. I understand that. But they will stay in power if they take over the derivative losses. Now remember, if Deutsche Bank hands over that bad bank of derivatives to the IMF, what happens? The IMF is going to take all those losses. Where does the IMF get their money? From the member banks, supposedly, if you believe in that. But they have also the special drawing rights. So they get to, the optics of this are going to be as ugly as can be. And I don't think it's going to work. But we'll find out, right? But September 11th looks like the day when we do see more and more people talking about, oh, what great firefighters the World Bank and IMF are. These are two criminal organizations run by the people that Dick Allgaier loves. He doesn't love it. He thinks controls us forever. So watch for a transfer of the derivative book, basically all the debts of the IMF, of Deutsche Bank, to go to the IMF. What would that mean for the world? I don't know. It would clearly violate all the derivative contracts. So will they have a waiver? Probably, because it's just you need the other side to agree to it. And all they do is want to get paid. But what about the credit default swaps? there's a huge amount of losers there because and all the covenants that will be broken. Oh my, it's so complicated. If the IMF took over Deutsche Bank's book, it would not trigger any credit default swaps, or would it? Are restructures put in the credit default swap contracts? I don't know. It's not even a restructure. It's some entity that creates money out of thin air using special drawing rights to go over all the debts of Deutsche Bank. It's going to get ugly any way you slice it. And the bad guys want the economy to be destroyed before the election time so that the criminal socialists get it. It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. Okay, here's another thing that I looked at. Now, I noticed this as I was working on my slides for the Freedom Roadshow. We all know the cover of The Economist magazine from 2008 or 1988. It had the Phoenix with the coming out of the burning fiat money, and it said, "Get ready for a world currency." I mean, we're on the brink of that, and they predicted it in 1988, 30 years ago, and they're getting down to the nitty gritty right now. Now here it is. Here's the big thing that I want to talk about, and Cliff and I talk about the Mandela effect a little bit in our discussion, because when I was putting together a slideshow for the event in Spokane, I kept looking at that date. I go, wait, I thought it was 2018. It was, everybody was saying 2018, but I'm looking at many of these pictures and they look a little like a 19. See how the right down here, see how the 8 is kind of tweaked? It seems like it's changing in some of these when you zoom it in and things like that. They have changed, or they look like they've changed. Now, I've already talked about the 0 with a line through it represents the gold in the Grand Canyon. I've shown that. I think I talked about that in the other videos. If it's not in those videos for the timeline, go look at the Golden Oldies to a Crypto Future presentation I have on the public road. Because this represents how much gold is left in the Grand Canyon to be used to D-Day, the final day. And I believe that's what that represents. Now, I do think, I talked to Cliff a little about this also, that there's a chunk of time that was removed and delayed and changed. 1 year. Exactly 1 year. So I think, absolutely still think it's 2019. But this might be a little Mandela effect thing, because I went through, if you do like a Google search, this would be a Google search for the Economist magazine 1988 cover. And I went through each one, and I'm like, some of these look like they don't look like 8s anymore. Is this because that's what happens in the Mandela effect? It's like it's a slow transition. It's like, and Cliff describes it's a removal of energy from these quantum computers. I have no idea. Anything could make sense, but I mean, the Mandela effect is a real thing because I've experienced it. I've seen it. Look it up. The biggest thing to me is that Kennedy, the limousine. I thought there was only 2 seats in that limousine, 2 rows of seats, and it turns out there's 3 now. I'm like, wait a minute, there's only 2. But you look at the pictures now, and it's 3. But oh man, it's weird. But so I think this might be a new Mandela effect changing. So let's just take a look at a few of these. So that one, if you look up close, it looks like it could be an 8, or it looks weird, right? Again, now some of these are very clear, 2018, and some are very kind of wishy-washy, like this one. And look at the 8. Now that's pretty clear, 2018, but that looks like it's been distorted a little, right? It's been squashed down and reformatted. Now there's a close-up. That's as clear as it gets. That's not as clear. That's really not as clear. See that? Some of these are smudged or differentiated. This is a clear picture. But look at the 8. Is this a Mandela effect in process? I don't know. I mean, that looks like an S. And again, obviously the big part of the 8 is right in here. But as you look in more and more, this one says it doesn't even look, it looks like 8026. And look at the 8. Is the 8 morphing to a 9? Well, here's an interesting thought. In one of these, and this is what I discovered early on, The Economist magazine changed. It originally said the world in 2019. I hope you guys remember when I talked about this. It was just black because I was reading into all the covers. And then all of a sudden it changed. It morphed into 2019. But it was originally announced with the different cover. Really, I mean, bizarre, strange, absolutely. So, I know it's not a big deal. That's reading into a whole lot of stuff. But it just struck me as something to keep an eye on. If the Mandela effect is real, it could be that this 2018 is morphing into 2019. I mean, look at that. So that's the current update. So we have Deutsche Bank failing. We have Christine Lagarde saying, I'm out of here. My last day is September 11th. And then we got the morphing Mandela affecting Economist magazine cover. Those are my two thoughts at the moment. BigSquareRoadRoota.com. Talk to you later.